All right, today we're looking at forms of government and systems of government. Let's go. Forms of government means who is in charge. In an anarchy, no one is in charge. This sounds great. Ooh, anarchy, total freedom. In reality, it's horrible. It's the absence of government. There's no law and order. There's no set of security systems or anything like that. And so in anarchy, everyone does what they want. That means the strong take from the weak. They can murder you. They can rape you. They can steal from you. They can kidnap your kids. They can leave you for dead, burn down your house, or whatever. You have no way to get back at them unless you take vigilante justice if you're strong enough to do that. This is not a good system. Anarchy, we've seen a little bit of that, just elements of it in Hurricane Katrina, the aftermath in New Orleans when the government was overwhelmed and they have rioting going on and looting. You see it in Watts, LA after the Rodney King verdict in the early 1990s. Anarchy is awful. No one really wants that. When they say I'm an anarchist, they mean I hate my government and want to get rid of it. All right, next thing we got, authoritarian. We got a whole bunch of different styles of authoritarian government, which essentially means strong national government. It means not a lot of individual rights or liberties for the people. They don't have a way to get rid of their king or other ruler. They are stuck with that government because that government controls them by force. Not the best. Individual rights, very limited. Dictatorship. One person's in charge. Maybe they have some key supporters they need, so it's a small group in a way. Okay? But generally you have one leader, and as long as they have the support of the military, police, and the media, which they generally control, they are able to run the country. People don't have a lot of individual rights. The dictator takes and does what they want. If they want to take a woman and marry her, or they want to steal something from somebody, take their land, they can do whatever they want. They are a dictator. Monarch, it's a little bit different. Yes, you have one person in charge, but generally they're hereditary rulers. The people are a little bit more accepting of them. They still have the backing of the military and control of the government, but often limited by a constitution or by a body of laws that they have to adhere to. If you think about King George II during the American Revolution, they had Magna Carta, which is a limitation on the king. The English Bill of Rights, which is a limitation on the king. The king had to ask Parliament for money. So in several ways, it was not an absolute monarchy. So a dictatorship would be more absolute total control than a monarchy would be. But the people are more accepting of monarchies sometimes and willing to follow hereditary rulers. Oligarchy. Okay, oligarchy. Essentially what you're looking at with an oligarchy is it's a small ruling council. On the one hand, in terms of a pure oligarchy, you could say, well, there aren't that many of them. You could pull out something like the de Medici family in Florence when it was a city-state during the Renaissance, but not that many of them. On the other hand, you might be able to almost broadly take all the authoritarian governments. Someone like Hitler, who was a dictator, had the backing of key people that if they'd all melted away from him, he would have been exposed and could have been overthrown. So you always have to have key backers, even as a dictator or a monarch. Without them, you're in trouble. So in some senses, you could call them an oligarchy. But there are two other examples that definitely would fit into this oligarch model of having kind of a ruling council, and that is theocracy, which is having a religious government, a religious-based government. Iran is the best example of this. The Taliban was another one. But in Iran, you have, over 30 years running now, basically a ruling council of mullahs, and you have a key leader that's out in front of them. Now, Iran has a president, but basically he would not go against what the ruling council says, and religious law is embedded into what the national law is. That's a theocracy. There are not very many of them. Single-party state is what we're talking about when we have communist countries. And people who are members of the party, they have extra privileges and abilities and benefits, and people who are not, don't. There is no opposition party allowed. So in none of these do you have any mechanism to get rid of the government. If you don't like what they're doing, tough, you're out of luck. So single-party state would be kind of an oligarchy because you have a ruling council, often called a Politburo. Theocracy, you have a ruling council in mullahs in Iran, so the same type of thing there. They are kind of oligarchies in some ways. Okay, now going on, I wrote representative democracy, but for a second let's just say democracies in general. Democracies, they are not perfect. The idea of a democracy is that the majority rules, okay? The idea of a republic, which we're going to talk about down here in a minute, is that you're based on a group of laws, and that you have this thing called the rule of law, that people can't violate or go against the law. That's why Richard Nixon resigned. He would have been impeached and convicted from office. And you've had other high officials in the United States, in states, or people, cabinet secretaries, have to step down due to scandals, even U.S. senators. So it's that you're bound by the law in a republic. Democracy is a system of voting where the people have the power to vote and to choose their government. So direct democracy, we saw this in ancient Greece, and this is everyone sits around and discusses and debates the ideas for laws, the problems that need to be solved, the issues, and then everyone votes on it. So one person, one vote. That's direct democracy. It's not very practical. You can't run national elections like that. We have an element of that in ballot measures. Okay, that would be a key example. States have ballot measures where citizens can propose a law, and then they can petition to get it on a ballot. If they get enough signatures of people who think it's a good idea, then it will be brought up to actually be voted on. Okay, so basically a direct democracy, I mean, it's not everybody sitting around all day in a ballot measure, but everyone gets to vote, so it's one person, one vote. It's not practical to do a direct democracy, obviously, in a large country, because you can't have everybody quit what they're doing and go having big national debate, which would take basically forever. Okay, representative democracy. Parliamentary democracies. Parliamentary democracies are ones where you have a legislative branch and you have some party or coalition of parties that are in control. They have a majority in their parliament. And examples of this would be, good ones would be Great Britain, United Kingdom, and Israel. And in both of these, if you lose the confidence, I guess, coalitions can fall apart and you have new elections that come up. So if you have a vote of no confidence in the government, then they immediately call for new elections and they're going to dump the Prime Minister. But the Prime Minister is the leader of the majority party or the largest party in a coalition that has a majority. So they are a member of Congress, but they're kind of the key leader. Okay? And there are many different examples. Many countries have parliamentary democracies today, which again are representative democracies in general. Presidential democracy is where it's what the United States has. You have an independently elected president. They are not, their elections just come on normal times. Every 4 years, every 2 years for certain members of Congress, 4 years for a president, and at a state level for a governor or for state representatives and senators. You don't have this thing where they're connected. Governors and presidents are independently elected. They're not a member of a majority party that is just in charge and can be revoked basically if there's no confidence vote. So it's a little bit different way, but they still have, you have a little bit more of a check and balance, I think, with a presidential democracy there. Okay, so republic again, you're taking this idea of there's a base set of laws that just cannot be violated, and that's a big factor in the idea of a republic. So you can see where, Democrats get their name, where Republicans get their name. Republicanism actually dates back to, kind of an idea from Great Britain, but essentially this idea that you're bound by the laws, power to the people, they're both the ideas kind of make up what the United States is today to kind of answer that. Democracies are not perfect. We still have corruption. We still have people do things they shouldn't. Some people in Congress and in different levels of the government clearly try and do things to their own benefit, even though there's laws trying to maintain a spirit of ethics and stuff. Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others that have been tried. And that's a fair way to put it. Someone like Thomas Hobbes would say, human nature is not great, you need to have a government in charge. But definitely, while not perfect, this idea of a democracy or a republic is far better than the alternative. Moving over quickly to systems of government. Unitary. A unitary system of government is where you have, generally in smaller countries, you have a national government that is the government. And if they have state or local governments or provincial governments, those governments are kind of subsections of them that do what they ask them to do. So the national government kind of is the government, okay? A confederal system of government, and again, systems of government is how it's organized and how it operates, okay? Confederal states are almost independent, autonomous political bodies, and they have kind of a loose alliance or league, of friendship, as they've sometimes said, where they're connected in some basic ways, but the national government cannot tell the states or the provinces what to do in a confederal system. Obviously, we have the Articles of Confederation government and the Confederate States of America as two examples of why this does not work, but why it was attempted to work, with this idea of protecting against too much national power. But it never works. You need to have some national power, or you end up with the problems they had in the Articles of Confederation, where states are trying to make their own foreign policy, coining their own money, and trying to place their own tariffs, even on each other. I mean, it's just a mess. What the United States features is a federal system of government, where the national government has some things it's in charge of, state and local have some things they're in charge of, and then there's some shared things. Okay? We call these express powers for national, we call them reserve powers for the states coming from the 10th Amendment, and we have concurrent powers as well. So coining money, making tariffs, making foreign policy, interstate commerce, the military, treaties. These are all things that only the national government can do. Some things like the way that elections are run and the main operations of schools are done by a state level, that they can operate that. And then some things are shared, like collecting of taxes. We'll talk more about that with federalism, but that's what a federal system of government is. It's a shared power relationship.